Hello, my name is Grian, and today we're going to be making a hot air balloon style house. Now, I know it doesn't actually look like a house, but we're using the inside as the interior. And yes, this was inspired by Tortoise's attempt on the Evo server to make his own hot air balloon house. So hopefully he can take some inspiration from this and use the design a little bit if he wants to. Anyway, the first thing that we need to do is quite obvious. We need to build upwards. Now remember, every time you enter this house, you're going to have to go up a ladder. So remember that when you place it. You might want to go a bit closer to the ground than I did. Anyway, once you've made this 1x1 tower, you then want to make a little flower shape using a block of your choice. I used spruce plank as it is my favorite. Filled in the corners with the bottom half of a slab and then topped it off with another square of spruce plank block. Right, we've got the base of our basket, and we don't want this basket to be too big. A 3x3 base and then an outer wall, so to speak, is ideal. Now, I've taken the upper side of the dark oak slab, trying to give it a bit of disparity in the colour, and then I've put some upside down spruce planks to try and give it a little bit of a wall. And that's pretty much our basket. Very small, very compact, but also got a bit of detail in there. We don't want to make this too big, because the bigger the basket, the smaller the balloon is going to look. And I know that sounds silly, but there is a sense of scale on this build. Anyway, the main part of the interior will be inside the wool itself. We'll get to that in a bit. We now want to go ahead and put some fences reasonably high up and square them off at the top. The longer the fences are, the bigger the difference between the basket and the balloon. I went 3 high on both the first layer and then the second layer as well. Now we need to kind of connect the two up. We don't want this to just be straight onto the wool because it will look kind of flimsy. So I'm sort of creating a bit of a connecting part by using some nether slabs and then some staircases with an extra bit of connector using some iron fence as well. Now we will have to remove one of these later on, but then I'm filling it in with grey wool. Now I chose some pretty dull colours for this build, I must admit. If you're making a hot air balloon, then maybe choose some brighter colours than grey and dark grey. So what we need to do is pay quite a lot of attention, because any mistake could end up in the whole balloon not taking the right shape. So we create a little funnel and then we build around it 1 block at a time for the meantime. So everything should be extending out 1 at a time, which is why I'm taking this very, very slowly to begin with. Then it's building up another block, so it's just 2 high, and then we fill in the corners of this one so that you get this shape here. Hopefully this is making sense. Even if you just slow down the video a bit, you should be able to see what's going on. Again, we're sort of building it up very slowly, but also giving it some height. Sometimes it will include a block over the edge, sometimes it will just be one on top of the other. So here's a quick detailed look at 1/4 of the current hot air balloon. So if it doesn't look like this, you should make sure that it does, and then replicate it on all 4 corners, or all 4 quarters, whatever you want to call it. And then you want to start building up around it again, 1 block over the edge, but now we're going to kind of shave off the sides because we really want to try and get a spherical shape. Getting a spherical shape is actually quite difficult. So we need to pay quite close attention to these little corners that we're going to be adding. Which bits stay as just 1 above and which bits just go 1 over. If you have access to World Edit, you can of course just do a sphere command and then build out the bottom. But most of us don't have that, so we're going to try and get it ourselves by hand. Now we're actually going to stop building using the grey wool at this point, because we're actually going to create a cap over the top so it looks like there's a separate bit of cloth or colour over the top. Is going to make the shape a lot better and allow us to use comfortably 2 different colours. Ignore what I just made. So basically what we want to do on each bit of the sticking out grey wool, we then want to create a line above it like I have there. Now we're going to try and arch the shape over first, because it'll be much easier to work from the top down in this case. So that's 4 up from where we left off and 2 down, and then we created a 1 step up each time. So as you can see, this should connect just over the top. If that top wool block doesn't match your center, something's gone wrong. So please make sure that you check that first. Alright, you should be able to copy fairly simply. You can count how many blocks there are, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it's just straight up from there, and we're going to add a bit more shape as we go along. So for the meantime, the first 3 layers just involve putting round blocks all the way round, making sure that it's a full block and not just a direct diagonal one. So as you can see, fairly simple. As long as you got that first layer right, the next 2 should be fairly simple, working your way downwards. The next ones are slightly different, which is why we're going to take them a little bit more slowly. We are going to build up the sides, but we're also going to just bring them straight down and have them extend a little bit. It should be quite visual in how to make sure that you get this right, because describing it block for block is actually fairly difficult. So as you can see there, that should give you a nice curvature all the way round. And like I said earlier, this is 1/4 of the build, so as long as you get this 1/4 right, you should be able to replicate it 4 times over. Now, what I'm trying to do here with the shape is give it a little bit of an up and down sort of diagonal style, because this is going to look like it's drooping over and have weights on it later on. It's going to be part of the design of this balloon. So once you've replicated that over, you can then make it as low as you want as well, but make sure that you are covering the light grey wool with your build, and of course you can use some way nicer colours than I have here, so that there should be no gaps in between. So everything looks kind of nice, and I just made it daytime, which is why all the colours suddenly changed. So what we're doing now is taking our iron fence and making some bits that are drooping down. Essentially what we're going to do is create some fans. Now you don't have to have these propellers at all. You could just leave it with some lights on it, because after all it is a hot air balloon, it should be floating on hot air. But if you want that kind of mechanical feel to it, you can add some fans or some propellers, whatever you want to call them, by adding a quartz slab and then making your way round and removing the block after it, so it looks like a spiral as it goes round. You can indeed add 2 trapdoors, one on top of the other, to try and make the propellers look a bit thicker as well. And like I said earlier, this will make it seem like the whole thing is rotating and spinning and keeping it afloat that way. The next thing to do is something that's a little bit frustrating for anyone that can't get barrier blocks. The best way to attach these ladders to your hot air balloon is by using barrier blocks, because it just sits there nicely. You can also just use World Edit if you want nothing behind it at all, and if you can't get either of those, I know barrier blocks is available on other editions of Minecraft in the creative menu, and on the PC it's not, so it's a bit annoying, but if you can get your hands on them, do so. If not, you will have to use some other block, like a physical block, and it kind of ruins the effect, which is, like I said, quite annoying. But the interior of this build is quite interesting, because when you go up the ladder, you go all the way to the top, and we're going to use this space in here. Now, I tried to make the most. I tried to utilize every part of this build. So I made 3 individual layers, and I started in this very tiny first room, and if you break any wool block in this segment, you will just straight away hit the outside. So there really is no space to spare here. So I just put some chests. I'm going to try and maximize storage, and I made 3 separate layers. I got the first one here, and I used a slab for even more space in here, so that when you bounce up and down, you do hit your head, but it's not quite as bad as having just 2 blocks in height. Now, how you decorate your interior has always been a personal touch on how you want. Do you want to go for just physical storage, like how much you can utilize it? Do you want to make it look good? Or do you want a mixture of the two? Personally, I want a mixture of the two. So I'm going to try and put some shelves with plenty of chests on them and make an area for loads of furnaces using this part here. Now there might be the odd block that you can remove, which is what I did there, but to be honest with you, you probably just want to try and shove as many furnaces into something like this as you can, and then try and decorate it as well. There's a lot of things you can do here. If you're not worried about utilizing the space, you may want to even do a staircase rather than a ladder, because a ladder does mean having a hole directly in the middle of your first layer, and then it like moves over to the side later on as well. Now, for the most part, I must admit, I am just trying to put as many chests in this layer as possible, and also, you know, try and add a few bits of basic decorations. I've got entire videos dedicated to decorations, so the interior of this build is kind of just a mix and mash of various things that I know, but the main layer to focus on really is the top one, because this one I've used for sort of furnaces and chests, but you know, there's a desk in there and stuff, but the main one is the top one where there is the most space. You can also slap some paintings on as well, so this one does have the most space, and that's why we kind of have that extra dome on the top really does make a difference. So I wanted to include an enchanting room here, because if this is a survival build, this is likely something that you would definitely want to have around. Now, unfortunately, you can't get the most bookcases out of it, because that would mean breaking into the wool, or you could just move it forward a block, but then that means reducing the amount of space that you have, but you can definitely get enough bookcases around it to make it worthwhile. And then I'm going to decorate it with a bunch of trapdoors. Trapdoors are so useful, especially when you don't have a lot of space, because they don't take up that much space, but they also have a really nice impact on your builds. So the next thing is just basic decoration techniques. The lighting, I would probably recommend using a sea lantern if you can get your hands on it, or glowstone. Torches tend to not look very good because they're quite messy, they stick out, and you can also make really cool bunk beds. I've also showed this before as well, and it's just a really nice opportunity to try out the really compact versions of things that normally you have no problem fitting in a base. So unfortunately, you do need to consider how big your balloon is going to be right from the offset. Now, of course, the one I've made, I would say this is a small balloon, because if it was even 1 block or 2 blocks smaller, you really wouldn't be able to fit much in here at all. So if you wanted more space in here, you need to make the whole thing scale up much larger. And of course, there is enough room here. The only problem is, I find with this build, is it's not very convenient having to go up to your base and then all the way back down again. I mean, you can jump off and do that if you want, but having to go all the way up can be quite time consuming, so that's definitely something to consider. Or perhaps you just want a few balloons to decorate, in which case you don't need any interior at all if you're not actually going to go inside them. And it might surprise your friends indeed that you have actually utilized this space in some way. So if you want to show people around your base, then they might be like, oh wow, this is really cool, because they wouldn't be expecting anything on the inside of this. So basic things such as just using chests, carpets, beds, anything like that, paintings, is a really good way of decorating something like this. I've gone very simple, compact. You really don't need that many beds. Anyway, that's pretty much it for the decoration of this build. One of the great things about this build is that it only takes about 20 to 25 minutes to make in creative, and it'll probably take a bit longer in survival. I would recommend making it a bit brighter. You could even add a trim around the bit over the top and make it a bit more colorful, but other than that, you can really do what you want with this. It is a fantastic idea, it's definitely unique, and you have your own space, your own literal bubble. So that's it, everyone. Thank you very much for watching. Tortoise, I hope you're watching, and I hope you use this for your base. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. Goodbye.